I'd been driving for what felt like forever, 2 hours at least, pushing hard along I-95, straight toward Baltimore. My wife, Claire, was attending a 3-day insurance conference at the Marriott, and while I told myself I was just going to surprise her with a nice dinner, the truth was harsher. I suspected she was cheating on me. I'd suspected it for months. Guilt, suspicion, anger, they all churned in my gut, and I could barely keep the truck on the road. For the past 3 months, every time she had these work events, something felt off. She'd come home late, act aloof, check her phone at all hours with a satisfied little smirk I'd never seen before. She used to be bright, cheerful, the kind of woman whose enthusiasm alone could fill a room. But that sparkle had gone cold. She still had her eye-catching figure, curves that once turned my head so fast I nearly got whiplash when we were teenagers, and long brown hair that caught sunlight like polished bronze. Yet some intangible part of her seemed locked away, as if she had secrets sizzling behind her eyes. Claire and I had been married for 14 years. We had 2 kids, Sarah 12 and Jake 10. We'd gotten married right after high school, young, impulsive, and hopelessly in love. But time changes things. Love can rot from the inside out if someone decides they deserve more than what they have at home. I was determined to put an end to my doubts. I needed to walk right up to room 214, where she was staying for that so-called conference, and see for myself whether the marriage was salvageable or a sinking ship. I'd also thought in my bleaker moments that if I caught her in the act with someone else, at least I'd know how to proceed. No more guessing, no more tossing and turning at night imagining every horrible scenario. I arrived at the Marriott just after 5 in the evening. The giant revolving doors, the gleaming lobby, the polished floors, everything looked plush and unassailable, the kind of grand setting that charges too much for parking and too little for honesty. I half expected a security guard to stop me. But that's the funny thing about these upscale hotels. You can wander in unchallenged if you look confident enough. I approached the front desk. A fresh-faced clerk in a crisp uniform asked if he could help. I introduced myself as Adam Taylor, offered my ID, and explained that I was there to see my wife, Claire Taylor, who was at an insurance conference in room 214. I said, with practiced composure, that she'd left a key for me. The clerk gave me a quick once-over, typed a few things into his computer, and smiled. "Here you are, Mr. Taylor," he said, sliding a key card across the counter. "Enjoy your stay." My heart thudded with every step toward the elevator. Overhead, the lights felt painfully bright, and my palms were sweating. I told myself I was ready for whatever I'd find, but that was a lie. I rode the elevator to the second floor, walked down the hallway with the worn red carpet, paused in front of 214, and slid the key into the lock. The door beeped green. I opened it, slow and quiet. Claire sat at the small desk in the corner, flipping through a stack of paperwork. She turned, eyes widening. "Adam? You scared me." I forced a grin, my voice casual. "Figured I'd surprise you. Brought my suit so we could go out for dinner." She blinked, and for a split second I thought I saw guilt. Then a bright smile spread across her face. "That's so sweet. I didn't expect you here." She stood up, brushed imaginary lint off her blouse, and approached me with open arms. I half expected her to block my path, but she didn't. She kissed me, pressing those familiar lips against mine. My stomach twisted. That was the same mouth I'd fantasized about punishing if I discovered she was a traitor. But she seemed relieved to see me. "Stay the night," she said brightly. "They gave me a decent room. You can help me relax after these stuffy seminars." "Sure," I said, playing along. "I could use a break." She kissed me once more, her fingers grazing my shoulders. Then she stepped back. "Let me grab a quick shower. Then we can figure out dinner plans, okay?" Her tone was so airy, so casual, that I could feel my earlier suspicions wither. Maybe I was paranoid. Or maybe she was a better actress than I realized. She sauntered into the bathroom, humming, confident as anything. I heard water start running, the hiss from the shower head. I kicked off my shoes and looked around. The room was neat, no sign of second guests, at least not on the surface. I exhaled. Maybe she was telling the truth after all. My head pounded. I'd driven 2 hours to find out the truth, and so far everything looked normal. But I could not let it go. On the dresser, I spotted her big toiletry bag. I meandered over, telling myself I was just looking for aspirin. But we both know that was a lie. I was looking for evidence. When I unzipped it, I found the usual stuff: makeup, hairpins, a small comb. Then I spotted them, a pack of 6 rubber. My heart turned to ice. After Jake was born, Claire had gone on birth control pills that messed her up, so I got a vasectomy. We never needed protection again. But here they were. I stared at them, my hands shaking. There was only one reason for her to keep it in her bag. She was seeing someone. She was having love with him. And that was the final nail in the coffin of my trust. Now, what does a betrayed husband do in that moment? Some would confront her. Some would scream. Some would walk out. Me? I saw red. I rummaged further and found a safety pin. Mind numb, I poked tiny holes in each condom, quick stabs right through the center, then placed them carefully back into her bag. Was it rational? Probably not, but it felt like a quiet revenge. If she dared use them with her side piece, maybe she'd reap the consequences. I slipped the pin into my pocket. My phone sat on the side table. I dialed my buddy Rob, a guy so loyal he'd bury a body for me if I asked. "Hey," I said in a low voice, "I need a favor. Call me in an hour. Make up some emergency I can't ignore. A burst pipe at the school. Something urgent that'll drag me back home." Rob agreed, no questions asked. By the time Claire finished showering, my plan was set. I'd find a reason to bail before bedtime, give myself space to process everything, figure out my next move. Claire emerged, hair damp, wearing only a fluffy towel. She shot me a sultry glance. "Hey, handsome, you look tense." I forced a weak chuckle. The drive wore me out. She sat beside me, rubbed my thigh. "Let me make it better." She leaned in for a kiss, the steam from her skin mixing with my shallow breath. A stronger man might have shoved her away, but I felt a twisted desire. Anger and betrayal can be potent fuel. So, I let her have her moment. We were intimate, but my mind was screaming the entire time. Every moan she made, every breath felt tainted. I wanted to see if she'd slip and mention anything, but she didn't. She pretended our moment was genuine, real, passionate. Afterward, we dressed and headed downstairs to the hotel restaurant. She seemed in a good mood. Ordered a small filet mignon and a glass of rosé. I got a heavy steak and whiskey, anything to drown my roiling gut. "So," I said, forcing calm, "you enjoying the conference?" She shrugged. "It's all right. Insurance seminars are dull, but they're necessary. Sometimes I wonder why you never ask about them." Her arrogance bled through. She was basically accusing me of not caring about her professional life. Funny, I thought, considering how invested I suddenly was. We chatted about the kids, about next month's mortgage payment, about random, mundane details. The tension in my shoulders wouldn't leave. Then Rob called, right on cue. I stepped away from the table. "Hey, Rob. Yeah? A burst pipe in the school basement?" I made sure to sound suitably distressed. "Sure. I'll head back right now." I gave it 2 minutes, enough to look legit, then ended the call. I returned to find Claire half smiling, half annoyed. "Something wrong?" I laid out the story. The plumbing issues at the school, me being the only one who could handle it. She feigned disappointment. "Really? Tonight? Adam, come on, we just got here." "I know. Believe me, I don't want to bail." I gave her the best sad face I could muster. "But if I don't fix it, they'll have to shut down classes tomorrow. You know how important that is." She sighed, pushing her plate away. "Fine, go be the hero plumber." She didn't press the issue, which told me everything I needed to know. She'd probably celebrate my exit, call her lover, break out those condoms. Well, the perforated ones. We took the elevator back up. The doors opened on another guest stepping out. A tall man with a confident grin. He greeted Claire like they were old buddies. "Claire," he extended his hand to me. "You must be Adam. I'm Tom Bradley. I work with your wife." I studied his face. Late 30s, too perfect hair, strong jaw, expensive watch. He smiled like the world owed him a favor. The intensity in Claire's eyes told me this was no stranger. This was the man who held my wife's secrets. "Tom," I repeated, forcing a handshake. "Nice to meet you." He stepped off, heading down the hall. My nostrils flared. My mind whirled with fantasies about slamming him against the wall, strangling the life out of him. But I had to bide my time. I walked Claire back to her room, said goodbye, and told her I'd call in the morning. Her expression was equal parts relief and something else. Maybe fear. Maybe excitement. I left, hopped in my truck, and made the lonely drive home. As the city lights faded behind me, I wondered if I was strong enough to see this through. The wife I once adored had become a lying cheat, and I had no real evidence to nail her except for the rubber. Nobody would believe me if I cried infidelity. I needed proof, cold and hard to show she was a manipulative liar. 2 days later, Claire returned home. She was bright, almost smug, purring about how exhausting the conference had been. Not once did she mention Tom or apologize for anything. She planted a quick kiss on my cheek, then spent the rest of the evening fussing around the kitchen as if we were fine. I had to hold it together, but inside, fury boiled. That Saturday, Claire's company, Liberty Insurance, hosted a family picnic. They did it every summer, renting out a big park with carnival rides, balloon stands, cotton candy, and everything in between. Sarah and Jake were excited to go. I dreaded it. The idea of being around Claire's colleagues, seeing Tom swagger around, turned my stomach. Still, I plastered a smile on my face for the kids' sake. We piled into the car and drove out to the park. Claire wore a tight V-neck blouse and skinny jeans that showcased her figure. She practically preened in front of the mirror that morning, flipping her hair, applying lip gloss with a smug flourish. "You look nice," I said woodenly. "Thanks," she replied, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Could have used a compliment without sounding so stiff." I let it slide. We arrived, signed in at the welcome booth, and grabbed some freebie tote bags. Immediately, Claire was swallowed up by a circle of co-workers laughing too loudly at jokes while I hovered at the edge with the kids. I saw Tom strolling around, shaking hands, looking every inch the charismatic opportunist. Within minutes, a woman I didn't recognize, Janet Bradley, introduced herself. Tall, auburn hair, blue eyes that sparkled with quick intelligence. She wore a crisp white blouse and slacks that accentuated her figure. "Hey," she said softly. "You're Claire's husband, right? Adam Taylor?" "I am," I said, measuring her expression. "And you are—" "Janet Bradley, Tom's wife." My eyebrows rose. Tom's wife. So here she stood, the spouse of the man I suspected was sleeping with Claire. I tried not to stare. She was gorgeous, carrying herself with the poise of someone who usually turns heads. We made small talk, discussing the weather, the turnout at the picnic. Then, as we drifted away from the main crowd, her voice lowered. "Look, I know about Claire and Tom. I've known for a couple of months." I froze, my stomach churned. "You knew?" She gave a quick nod, eyes flicking over my shoulder. "I've tried everything to get Tom to stop. He denies it when I confront him. I even hired a private investigator." That little revelation hit me like a jolt of electricity. "Then you must have photos. Proof," she confirmed with a grim smile. "I do. Enough to make a strong case in a divorce. My lawyer wants me to gather statements from people who can testify, maybe even from Claire, but it seems like she's in too deep." I nodded, feeling both relieved and sick. Relieved because I wasn't losing my mind. Claire really was having an affair. Sick because it meant our marriage was in free fall. Janet asked if I wanted to share resources, evidence, testimonies, anything that could strengthen both our cases if we ended up divorcing. I said yes without hesitation. She suggested we meet the next day at her house, 26 Hemlock Avenue, Cresmont, since Tom would be out golfing. We exchanged contact information. Then we drifted back to the main crowd, slipping in as if nothing had happened. Claire was too busy enthralling her colleagues, throwing her head back in a theatrical laugh whenever Tom made a witty remark. Meanwhile, Tom kept an arm's length from Janet, who wore an expression of studied neutrality. The tension in the air was stifling. The next morning, I told Claire I had errands. She barely gave me a second glance, saying she'd be out shopping with a friend. Perfect. I dropped the kids at my parents' and drove across town to Hemlock Avenue. The street was lined with cozy houses, each with well-kept lawns and flower beds. Janet's place stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, bright with rose bushes and a neat porch. She opened the door wearing jeans and a sweater, hair tied back. "Morning, Adam," she said with a weary smile, ushering me in. The interior was tastefully decorated, all warm colors and subtle lighting. She guided me to her den, where a computer monitor was set up on a small table. The screen displayed a cheap-looking motel room with a single bed, empty at the moment. Janet gestured for me to sit. "I have a private investigator on retainer. He set up hidden cameras. Tom's consistent with his patterns. He books that room every time he golfs." Her voice choked on the last word. She offered me a soda. I took it, swallowing the dryness in my throat. "You're telling me they're meeting today?" "Likely. Tom thinks I've stopped checking on him." We waited, passing the time with anxious conversation. Janet pulled out an accordion folder stuffed with photos. Claire and Tom entering motels, stepping out of restaurants, once even kissing in a parking garage. She had audio recordings, phone logs, enough to bury them. My gut twisted looking at the evidence, yet part of me was grateful. For months, I'd felt a gnawing dread without proof. Now I had it, and it felt like a hammer to the skull. Finally, the screen flickered. The motel door opened. In walked Tom, wearing a golf polo. Right behind him was Claire, hair pinned up, her blouse barely buttoned. They kissed like horny teenagers, tearing at each other's clothes. Within seconds, they were naked. The visuals were disturbingly clear. My hands balled into fists. The woman I'd loved for half my life was there, hooking up with a man I barely knew. I watched for about 2 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. I've seen enough. Janet's face was pale. Me too. She killed the feed. I'll have the PI make a DVD. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. Thank you. We spent the next hour forging a plan. Janet would share her evidence. I'd do the same. We wanted divorces that left Claire and Tom with nothing but regret. If they chose to fight, we had ammunition. When the conversation wound down, Janet offered to show me her koi ponds in the backyard, an unexpected hobby she loved. Grateful for the distraction, I followed her outside. The backyard was landscaped with stone paths, waterfalls, 3 different ponds. She had koi of various colors, each gliding beneath the water. It was surreal to stand there, chatting politely about fish while my marriage crumbled. But it felt oddly peaceful. Janet pointed out the pumps and filtration systems, and I told her about my background in plumbing. We found ourselves relaxing for the first time that day. Eventually, she walked me out. "I'm sorry this is happening," she said quietly, hand on the doorframe. "But at least we're not alone, right?" I nodded. "We'll handle it." Over the following weeks, I learned Claire's routine in brutal detail. I'd check her toiletry bag whenever I heard water running. Each time I found fresh rubber. I kept the safety pin handy, poking holes in them, imagining her face if she ever learned what I was doing. The strangest part, she carried on as if nothing was wrong, except she grew more arrogant with each passing day. She accused me of not appreciating her enough, of being too small-minded. I started wondering if she relished the thrill of living 2 lives. Family woman by day, Tom's mistress whenever she could sneak away. I cornered her in the living room one Friday evening after the kids went to bed. "Claire, we need to talk. About your job." She was watching some reality show, not bothering to mute the TV. "We've talked about it already. What's your problem?" "I want you to quit Liberty Insurance. I can't stand the environment, or Tom Bradley. He's no good for you." She flicked her gaze at me, letting out a derisive snort. "You are obsessed. Tom's just a coworker. I'm not quitting my job just because you're insecure. It's not insecurities. I see how you act around him." She stood, turning off the TV with a dramatic flourish. "Adam, you need to grow up. Stop blaming me for your jealousy." Her voice was laced with scorn. "I'm not discussing this again. I'm tired of your demands." She brushed past me, heading upstairs, leaving me stewing in my own rage. Meanwhile, Janet and I fell into a pattern of exchanging updates. My kids called her the koi lady, thrilled whenever they got to see her fish. Claire never connected the dots. On nights Tom and Claire met up, the kids and I would be at Janet's, enjoying a calm environment or simply watching movies. Janet filed for divorce first. Tom fought it, but the evidence was overwhelming. She had photos, recorded phone calls, even that motel room footage. Furious, Tom tried to bury her under legal threats, claiming invasion of privacy. Janet's lawyer tore him to shreds. Claire, on the other hand, was either oblivious or believed herself untouchable. She never asked about my late nights or what I was really doing. Perhaps guilt froze her questions. Or maybe she just didn't care. Then, one night, she dropped a bombshell. She sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, swirling it lazily. "I've been stressed. I'm taking some time off. Going to visit my sister Nancy for a few days, maybe a week," she sipped. "Thought you'd appreciate the break. You're so moody these days." My jaw tightened. She sounded condescending, as though she were granting me a favor. "All right. When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. Nancy has space. I want to clear my head." She gave me a pointed look, daring me to argue. I didn't. Instead, I gritted my teeth, forcing a casual, "Have fun." My mind spun with potential reasons for this sisterly visit. Something told me it wasn't for R&R. I started poking around. Claire had stashed receipts in her purse from the family planning center. One quick check and my worst suspicions soared. She might be planning to get an abortion. The holes I'd poked in her condoms. Did that mean she was pregnant? Pregnant by Tom? I needed to confirm. Within a day, I drove to the clinic, guessed she might have arranged the procedure there. Most places turned me away when I tried to ask for details. But the family planning center let me sign a consent form, so they said, if I could prove I was the spouse. I brazenly marched in, pretended to be clueless but helpful. "Oh, I'm just here to sign that form so we're all on the same page, right?" The receptionist checked her records, then slid a file over. I signed. Friday, 11 a.m. That was the date of the appointment. My blood roared in my ears. So it was true. She was pregnant, most likely with Tom's child, all because of the sabotage I'd done. My heart hammered with shock, anger, regret, savage triumph. She hadn't just cheated. She'd gotten knocked up and was about to erase the evidence. I left the clinic with a new focus. There would be no peaceful parting. She wanted to play with. I drove 3 hours to Nancy's house. Claire had just arrived the night before. Nancy was married to a man named Brad, an ex-construction foreman who was big enough to bench press me. The atmosphere was tense the moment I walked in. Claire glared, arms folded. "What are you doing here?" I gave a tight smile. "Thought I'd visit. Kids are at my parents' place." "Figured I'd grab a few days off since you're on vacation too." Nancy flashed a nervous glance at Brad, who tried to plaster on a friendly grin. "Sure, more the merrier," he muttered. Claire's eyes narrowed, jaw set. "I didn't invite you," I shrugged. "I'm here anyway." A few moments of awkward silence followed. Brad coughed. "How about we go fishing tomorrow, Adam? My buddy Jack has a boat. We can get out on the water, crack a few beers, let the ladies relax." I pretended to consider. Sounds fun. But the next morning, I refused to go. Stood by the passenger door, arms crossed. Brad got red-faced, tried to argue, but I brushed him off. He and Jack finally left without me, fuming. Inside, Nancy started making phone calls. Claire asked me to leave them alone. "Go do something else, Adam," she barked. "We have errands." I took my time, drank coffee in the kitchen, ignoring their attempts to shoo me away. I shut off Claire's phone the moment she wandered out of sight, ignoring the repeated call-waiting beeps from Brad. Nancy whispered furious curses into her own phone. I guess she was trying to reschedule Claire's procedure, or at least warn them we'd be late. I blocked every chance they had to slip away. By the time Brad returned, it was mid-afternoon. He looked exasperated, as if he'd been shouting into a dead phone all day. Nancy tore into him for not forcing me onto that boat. Claire hovered, tense and silent, her expression teetering between frustration and raw rage. That evening, I cornered Claire in Nancy's kitchen after supper, the light overhead casting sharp shadows on her face. "Claire," I said calmly, "you're done working for Liberty Insurance. Either quit or I'm filing for divorce." She stared, fury twisting her features. "Shut up. I'm sick of hearing this. I'm not quitting. You can't bully me into that." I took a deep breath, rummaged in the manila folder I'd brought, pulling out divorce papers. I slid them across the kitchen table. "Sign them, or don't. But if you refuse, I'll do it on my own." She looked at the papers, her jaw dropping in disbelief. Then she snarled, "You can't divorce me for not quitting my job. That's not grounds for anything." "Adultery is," I said softly, pulling out a stack of photos and fanning them on the table. Claire in Tom's arms, exiting motels, half-dressed, her face drained of color. She snapped, "You bastard! You've been spying on me?" She tried to snatch the photos, but I grabbed her wrist. "How else was I supposed to get the truth? You've made a fool of me." Her lips quivered. "You had no right to do this. It's sick. You set me up, like some twisted pervert. You set yourself up the moment you let Tom into your bed." Footsteps pounded. Nancy and Brad rushed in. Nancy gasped at the photos. Claire was trembling with rage, eyes flicking from the pictures to me. Then my phone buzzed. My dad was calling, letting me know he'd arrived with a truckload of Claire's belongings, everything from the house. I ended the call. Claire glared, tears glistening. "What did you do?" I leaned close, my tone ice cold. "I changed the locks, took your stuff. If you need anything else, send me a list." She looked shocked. Nancy tried to defend her sister, but I cut her off. "I have half the money from our accounts in an envelope. That's yours. I signed over the title of your car. That's yours. As for the kids, you'll see them once a week and maybe overnight once a month. But you'll sign a notarized statement about your affair first." Claire sputtered. "What are you talking about? You can't—" I dropped the final bomb. "I know you're pregnant. Friday, 11 a.m., Family Planning Center. Ring a bell." Her scream tore through the kitchen. "You had no right." I pulled the safety pin from my pocket, placed it on the table. "I've been poking holes in your condoms for 2 months, Claire. You went through nearly 50 of them in 2 weeks. Now you're pregnant with Tom's child, or you were. But you're disposing of that problem on Friday, right?" She broke down, tears streaking her cheeks. "You're insane." My expression was grim. "You started this, not me." Brad looked horrified. Nancy stood by Claire, arms around her shoulders. The two sisters clung to each other, sobbing as if I'd committed the unholiest transgression. I turned and walked out, ignoring Claire's cries. Dad waited outside with the truck, engine idling. We carried boxes of Claire's clothes and personal items onto Nancy's porch. The entire time I felt an odd sense of calm. This was the end. In the weeks that followed, Liberty Insurance fired both Claire and Tom. Office gossip had spread like wildfire, especially after Tom's wife, Janet, threatened legal action. Claire refused to sign any affidavits, but it didn't matter. The evidence of the affair was overwhelming. She moved in with Nancy permanently. I heard rumors that Tom was paying for her living expenses. Maybe guilt drove him, or maybe he felt obligated because he'd fathered that unborn child. I didn't care. Janet finalized her divorce from Tom in record time. She got almost everything: the house, investments, alimony. Tom cursed and tried to drag it out, but her legal team demolished him. My own divorce from Claire wrapped up 4 months later. Claire didn't fight. She must have realized she'd lose. She scurried off to Omaha with Tom, who'd found a new job. Fine by me. I had the kids, who didn't miss her much to my surprise. They had always sensed her distance, and her arrogance had started affecting them, too. Then Tom vanished. Disappeared without telling Claire. Maybe he realized his life was a mess, or maybe old debts caught up to him. A rumor floated around that he got mugged outside a bar, sustaining multiple broken ribs and losing a testicle in the beating. Karma, some said. Others insisted it was just random street violence. Whatever the reason, Claire found herself abandoned. She ended up slinking back to Nancy's place. During that same period, Janet and I spent more time together. We were cautious, not looking to jump into anything romantic too soon. We had baggage, heartbreak, but we enjoyed each other's company. My kids adored her, and she showed them the joys of caring for Koi. We took short road trips, visited aquariums, turned lazy Sundays into feed the fish afternoons. 3 months later, we were discussing marriage. We'd survived storms. We both knew heartbreak. Now we found unexpected solace in each other. She sold her old business and used some money to buy a 6-bedroom villa with a pool large enough for the kids to cannonball into all summer. She also revealed she'd kept my old Jaguar XK 140 hidden away in the garage, a surprise for me, since my ex-wife had forced me to sell the one I originally owned. Janet had tracked down a near-identical model. The day I saw it, bright and sleek, I felt something thaw in my chest. A happiness that had been stolen was coming back. As for Claire, the last I heard, she was stuck in a cramped attic bedroom at Nancy's. Both sisters struggled financially. Nancy's marriage to Brad imploded once he took a job on the Alaskan pipeline. He mailed Nancy divorce papers, cutting ties. Now Claire and Nancy lived together, each abandoned by the men they'd tried to manipulate or control. I heard occasional stories, how they bickered, how they blamed each other, how they rehashed the past. Me? I slept well at night. My brutal revenge had been to expose Claire's hypocrisy, sabotage her manipulative lifestyle, and make sure she lost every comfort she'd grown arrogant about. She ended up with no career, no stable relationship, no easy money. She had to see the fiasco she'd created. Perhaps the pregnancy had been handled. Perhaps she'd gone through with the procedure. I never asked. That was her problem now. Janet and I grew closer every day. My kids adjusted quickly, loving her koi ponds, her warm personality, and the calm environment she created. No more secrets, no more lies, no more arrogance poisoning the air. Some months later, Claire reached out, desperately wanting to reconnect with our children. She left a voicemail apologizing, but I was conflicted. When I returned her call, she pleaded to see our kids. I demanded she sign an admission of guilt before we'd even discuss supervised visits. Her pleas turned into curses when I rejected her attempts to trivialize her actions. After her rant, I ended the call, blocking her number permanently. Janet and I married in a small, joyful winter ceremony with our kids by our side, celebrating afterward by feeding koi under the moonlight. We settled into our new villa, enjoying family dinners and planning future trips to Japan to visit koi farms. Our lives had transformed into a harmonious blend of love and stability, a stark contrast to the past turmoil.